Hey, what's up guys? My name is Josh and welcome to another headphone comparison. A good old-fashioned headphone comparison. I haven't done one in a long time. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about two around $500 headphones. One is coming in at a consistent $499, which is going to be the Aeon X from Drop/Dan Clark. And the other one is going to be the DT 1990. And I've seen this 1990 all the way down to 470, and I've also seen it up to about 580. So really depending on when you're getting it, but around this price category is really where I think these two headphones compete. And I think it's a good time to bring up the disclaimer that when I'm talking about the headphones here and the sound, I'm talking in comparison to one another, not how they exist in the market itself. So if I say the 1990 is colder or the Aeon is warmer, I'm talking about how they compare, not as they exist in the entirety of the headphone market. This headphone was sent to me by Drop. Thank you very much, Drop. And this was sent to me by a friend of mine, Israel. Thank you very much, Israel. So I think the first thing that we want to cover is going to be the build. And both of these headphones have fantastic build, but I think for different purposes. One is more of a work device and is more like tougher, more robust. The other one is more premium feeling. It's more of a higher quality product and more of a luxury rather than necessarily a tough work build. And if you hadn't guessed it, the 1990 is going to be the work build, right? The 1990 is a professional device, right? It is for mixing and mastering. It is meant to be used and abused. And the build reflects that. It's got a good use of metal and it does creak a little bit. As you can hear that, it doesn't quite feel super luxurious, but it does feel very tough. And these things can take quite a bit of beating before they break down. Now, when it comes to comfort, I actually find the 1990s to be more comfortable over time. The pads on the Aeon X do get a little bit hot after about an hour of listening for me. In like a standard room temperature environment. But if I'm just listening for like a short period of time, if I had to pick between the two for comfort, I'm going to pick the Aeon. Both of these do come with their own carry case. The Aeon X does come with a little bit smaller of a carrying case. It's a little bit more compact, but both do come with a carry case. Both are very nice. One benefit to the 1990 though is that it does come with an extra set of pads. I don't really recommend using those pads, but if you like them or just need a backup in a hurry or something like that, then you have that option. And it comes with an extra cable. The Aeon X only comes with the pair of pads that are on it and one braided cable. Okay, now when it comes to amping and what you need to power these guys, they're both relatively efficient headphones. The Aeon for impedance being slightly more efficient at 13 ohms versus the 250 ohms of the 1990. The sound pressure level for the Aeon is about 95 dB as opposed to the 102 decibel for the 1990. So when it comes to actually amp pairing, I find the 1990 not to be that picky of a headphone. It can be powered off of a little bit of power. It can be powered off a lot of power, high quality amp, low quality amp, and it's generally going to sound pretty good. It's not particularly what I would consider to be a revealing headphone, despite being a very, very good dynamic headphone. The Aeon is a little bit more picky. It can be driven well and it sounds good off of everything, but you definitely notice some scalability in going to higher end amplifiers and more powerful amplifiers with a little bit better driver control. Okay, now let's talk about the sound of these two headphones. The 1990 is extraordinarily precise. The Aeon sacrifices a little bit of that precision for an overall warmer, smoother, still very fast, but an overall warmer and smoother sound signature comparatively. Okay, so the treble response. And I actually consider these headphones to be equally resolving, but they go about producing treble in different ways and have different levels of forwardness that result in different kind of benefits and consequences, essentially. So the 1990, I still consider to be probably the treble king, just for raw, pure information in the treble response without being too overkill. I think at the $500 price category, it is probably the best, even beating out the 660S in my opinion by a pretty large margin compared to that headphone. It just is so accessible and has all of the information that you could ever want, and it delivers it. Maybe not perfectly, but it's pretty good for the price. Now the Aeon, while equally resolving, has a lot less forwardness. So it's still there, but it's not quite force-fed to you. And there is, in some senses, sometimes sounds that you will pick up on the 1990 that you will not pick up just because it's so like low on the actual Aeon here. Again, that forwardness is what gives the upper hand to the 1990 just for pure raw information. But there is a slight caveat in the S regions, which we'll talk about in a second when we talk more about mid-range. But to finish out the treble, this is kind of a classic argument over actual driver capability versus the tuning of the driver. I consider both of these equally capable. The accessibility on the 1990 is just far more because it's a lot more forward. Now, that being said, not everybody likes the treble response of the 1990. I don't always love it. Honestly, sometimes it is kind of punishing, but I have to say that technically it is a superior headphone here, I think. Okay, now let's talk about the mids. And before I'm gonna kind of combine the treble response when I'm talking about the S range into the vocal department here. So with the S, for lack of a better term, on the 1990, they are harsh. And this is something that the Aeon does, in my opinion, a lot better. And it's probably the one category of treble response that I think the Aeon takes it. The Aeon provides an S that sounds detailed and without sibilance, and also without an extreme amount of forwardness. So some darker headphones like the 2C will kind of glide over the S's, and they almost, in a sense, like won't even acknowledge that they're a harsh sound. And on the Aeon, it has the right sense of like not lying to you about it. And if a track sounds really sibilant, this will produce that track pretty well. But it's not ever overkill. It's not really going to be something to where it's taking you out of the music like some other sibilant headphones can. And I don't really consider the 1990 to be a sibilant headphone because it doesn't lack detail in the S range, but it is very forward and quite unpleasant from time to time on the 1990. Now, one last thing about the treble response is that I feel like the treble on the 1990 is a little bit more kind of hilled and valleyed. It's a little bit more uneven. Again, more accessible in just about all the frequencies, but it seems to have some dips and peaks that are a little bit further apart than the more consistent treble on the Aeon. But again, not as accessible. All right, so the vocal department, I still think that if you're just in it for the vocals, I think the HD 660S is probably the best vocal headphone at this price category. I think it suffers in some other areas here that these headphones are better at. But in terms of vocals, if that's all you care about, 660S is the way to go. There's also a link for that in the description down below. Now that's at this price category. The next step up from the 660S for vocals, overstepping these two, I think is the 2C. That is a fantastic headphone for vocals. For my preferences, I love it. It's actually one of the best vocal headphones in my opinion. All right, so when it comes to the vocals and kind of a comparison between these two, I think that the 1990 sounds a little bit thinner. It sounds a little bit leaner. It does arguably sound cleaner, but it just doesn't quite have a filled out warm mid-range quite like the Aeon does. And you can definitely have a preference on which one you prefer. I do appreciate the leaner characteristics of the 1990, but my preferences and just my love for vocals go with the warmer side of the Aeon. The Aeon is smoother. It's fairly detailed there. In fact, I would say it's just as detailed as the 1990, I think, in the vocal department, but it's way more warm. And it just provides this kind of warm, fuzzy hug that I love in my vocals. So the 1990 can have the detail and the texture and the timbre of a deep speaker, but it just doesn't have the more broad delivery that the Aeon can have. And the Aeon also has the broad delivery, but it also has separation. But the 1990 always seems like it's kind of coming from like a small ball, like a point source sound from in front of you. Whereas depending on the track, the Aeon can have that if the track is recorded like that, but it also is able to display a little bit more broad of a sound for those lower, deeper notes. And overall, to wrap this up, I think the 1990 has better placement for vocals, but my preference of just sound, the way the sound sounds, I think lies with the Aeon. Now, when it comes to the bass response is fairly simple for me. And it's just a toss-up of preference. The Aeon has more, but the 1990 is cleaner. It's more refined. It's got a little bit more texture, but the Aeon is a little bit stronger performing there. And I don't really have much more else to say about it. The placement isn't drastically different. The bass quality is not very far apart. But if we're going to go head to head, I think those are the most important highlights of the bass. All right, now for imaging and soundstage. Imaging is equal. I'm going to consider that a draw. Soundstaging, I think the 1990 has more of a kind of free sound characteristic where it sounds very open and airy, and that's something that I discussed in the Aeon review, that it did not sound like open and airy because I think whatever foam they're using is very aggressive at blocking out the outside world. So it doesn't sound like this vast openness of sound whereas the 1990 seems a little bit more free for the sounds to come out. Now, in terms of actual quantifiable distance, like what seems like is coming from further and further away, and I was using my 2 test reference albums I use for imaging and soundstage, Yoshihiro Kawa's Spaces and Amber Rubarth Sessions from the 17th Ward. Both those albums through and throughout are fantastic for soundstaging and imaging tests. Now, I'd say the Aeon is like 95% as wide. And then the soundstaging surroundness, the ability to kind of give like a complete picture, is about the same. The Aeon does, because of that non-airy feeling, it sounds a little bit more of a closed system. But when I'm closing my eyes listening to this, it really does seem pretty far out. It just doesn't have the other open characteristics of making me kind of feel or imagine that I'm not wearing any headphones at all, kind of like the 1990 can do. But imaging and soundstage are really good, almost equal. I'm going to give a slight upper hand, though, to the 1990. So my conclusion here. The 1990 is a very analytical headphone. It is analytical all of the time, whether you want it to or not. And the Aeon, while detailed, it's kind of chill, right? It just has a more relaxed feeling while giving you information at the same time. And it's just able to have a more angelic kind of delivery to it. You know, the 1990 is kind of that dude who is all facts all the time, right? He's not that fun to work with, but you know, the information that is going to be given you is going to be accurate. And then the Aeon is going to be kind of your smoother talker, your more like party person type of sound. So I'm actually going to defer to the use cases of these 2 headphones on which one I recommend. The 1990 is made exactly for who I think it's built for. It is built for professionals or people who want to experience the professional sound at home. The Aeon is made for more at-home, relaxed, luxurious listening. And I think that's exactly where these 2 headphones lie. And even though $500 is a lot of money, I think both of these are 100% worth it, but for 2 different types of listeners. And hopefully you fit one of those 2 categories. If you do, there are links to purchase either of these headphones in the description down below. And until the next video, make sure you like the video if you like this one. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. And subscribe if you want to look forward to more videos and reviews and comparisons with some other headphones and speakers and amps in the future. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. My name is Josh, signing off.